Alrighty, I got a video here for you today. It's basically something that I've been promising to do to all the Twitch viewers for a while, and anyone else that's coming over for the first time. This should be quite informative. This will be a video detailing the military weapons, as well as their uses, their roles, and how good I think each one of them is. This will be quite a long video, so I will have in the description timestamps to be able to skip directly to the weapon that you're looking for. I will also give you a quick warning that with the birthday event coming up soon, hopefully, that's not confirmed yet, but one can hope, it might not be a good idea to spend all of your tickets, because the birthday llamas last year did use the event tickets that they were a part of, meaning that if you spend all your tickets now, you perhaps won't be able to get all of the previous heroes and guns that you're looking for in the birthday llamas, which honestly, the birthday llamas are even better value than the military, just because they have so much in them. Even the military weapons themselves should be in the birthday llamas. So keep that in mind. It's definitely going to burn some people, definitely burned some people last year as well. So with that all being said, I do hope you enjoy the video. Do make sure, if you're interested in seeing more of this content, to like, subscribe, and even drop into the Twitch stream. The details right below me there, aren't they? Yes, they are. So I hope you enjoy this video, and without further ado, let's get to it. Alright, so I got a video here for you today. It's going to be outlining the military set, which is currently back in the llamas. It's the event llamas for this season, season 9. As of May, they are not part of the expansion set, so you can only get them at the moment, but perhaps in the future we'll be able to get them year round. So I'll explain which weapons I like, when I use them, how I use them, and what perks I use on them, as well as show off a little bit of gameplay of them here in the mission now. So I'll start with the assault rifles and do a quick too long didn't read, and then I'll get into them in more detail. I'll just show off the perks and go from my favorite to least favorite. So starting off with Hacksaw, then we've got the Silent Spectre, tied with the Bobcat for my personal favorite, tied on second. After that would be the Wraith for the third position, fourth weapon. And then after that, it's going to be these two, the Lynx and the Tiger. I'm not a huge fan of either, honestly. They're relatively good weapons, as are all the military weapons. They're just not personal favorites of mine, and I feel like they are lacking in overall DPS and usability. So that will be all the perks on them and my favorite assault rifles. After that, we got these two pistols. So we got the Whisper, and we got the Bald Eagle. I quite like the Bald Eagle, it's very nice for popping those headshots off, and the Whisper can be quite nice as well. Then we've got the snipers. So we've actually got two obliterators for a very good reason. This obliterator is my damage obliterator. I'll use this myself, or I'll give it to a defender. And then we've got a utility obliterator. This is only here to be destroying walls and cars and trees and shit that's in the way. Then after that, kind of like another sniper, we got the Crossbow. I'm not a big fan of it, but there is a nice use for it. I'll explain that a little bit later. But these are all the roles that I like on them. Ground Pounder, it's a nice shotgun. You have to click it quite a lot to get its max DPS. It's kind of like the Hunter Killer. I prefer a more powerful single shot sort of shotgun than a long sort of fire rate shotgun. And then very lastly, we have the quad launcher. Very nice rocket launcher that leaves an area of effect fire after it dissipates the initial explosion. Alright, so we'll look at these a little bit more. So I currently have equipped the Hacksaw. Out of all of them, this is by far my favorite military weapon. The gun is fantastic. So I use on this gun double damage, reload speed, and then I use the 6th and 5th perk synergizing with one another, so it snares targets, and then it will do more damage to snared targets. So the reason I do double damage, and this will be a recurring theme explaining why we use what rolls instead of crit, instead of fire rate, instead of all the different rolls that they can have. The amount of rolls that are on all these guns, they're quite versatile, and that's why they're up for quite a lot of discussion. This was one of the very first, no, it is the very first weapon set that could have multiple damage rolls past just the 1 or 2 damage rolls that most guns up until that point had. Part of the reason why they're really good, even without any rolls, they're still very nice weapons. So the hacksaw being my favorite, the reasoning being is its consistent fire. So it's got a very nice fire rate, it's got a very large magazine, its damage is very good, and it actually has a reasonably good sort of bloom and recoil for an LMG. In fact, if you're someone who plays BR at all, this is better than almost every other assault rifle in the BR when it comes to bloom and the recoil, even though this is an LMG. So it's an LMG that really feels like an assault rifle, but a large magazine size. Like I said, the rolls that I went for, if we go and inspect this item, we see that this gun only has 10% crit chance, only 50% crit damage, but it does have a high fire rate. So to explain those 3 rolls and why they're important for crit builds, is that crit chance is how often you will shoot a bullet and the chance that it has to crit. Critting is going to be more damage, not to be confused with headshots. Critting will happen on this gun, currently without any modified rolls, every 10 bullets, 1 in every 10 bullets. And when it does crit, it will do 50% more damage. So that's there. Now, I prefer my guns to have higher crit chance and higher crit damage to actually use them as a crit weapon. Fire rate is very nice as well, so we do have a very high fire rate, and guns that normally have good crit potential are incredibly good with a high fire rate, but we don't really have that crit potential here, so that fire rate, even though it can have a crit build on it, I wouldn't recommend, especially seeing it was going to have at least 1 crit rating, and then you only get 1 crit damage. There is definitely better crit options out there. So for this reason, I'm pretty confident in these being some of the best rolls for the gun, especially for my personal playstyle. So here's some gameplay of it. As you might see, I'll be able to just consistently shoot things, burn them down. Even these guys here, these are all 108, the gun itself is 106, so the sort of like relevant damage that I'm doing from the gun does suit the minions level quite well, and I'm able to do a very nice consistent amount. Reload speed is very important on this gun because of its large magazine size. So that's the hacksaw. Very nice gun. This one in particular you're looking at is a obsidian version, or bright core when I use it at 130. That is because I accidentally did it, honestly, but it did work out to be not a bad idea, as it is nice to have a weapon that doesn't cost your expensive your expensive shadow shard or sunbeam, and the increased fire rate is quite nice because when you go to shadow shard you lose fire rate. All right, so next up we will look at the Bobcat next. So the Bobcat is got 3 damage rolls, so this could be triple damage, or this could be 1 crit rating and 2 crit damages. So for that reason, some people do like a crit build on this one, whereas the hacksaw is pretty universally agreed that it's not a crit gun. Some people like a crit build on this just because it can have the 2 crit damages, as well as it does have the fire rate to really back up that. So the fire rate comes in really important because the more bullets you can get out, the more often you crit, right? So if we put a crit roll on this, we're going to be looking at a little bit better. We're going to be around the 30 sort of percent. That means like a 1 in 3, just under a 1 in 3 of the bullets that come out of our gun will be critting. It's not great, it's not bad, so it's an okay build. I would still highly recommend this build. Double damage fire rate. Now, the fire rate can be swapped out here for another damage roll. What that does do is it does increase the per damage of the gun, but it does decrease the overall DPS. We have double damage fire rate, and you can take the extra damage. It will make the gun, like I said, do less DPS, but more damage per bullet, meaning that it's cheaper to run, basically. It will be cheaper on the durability of the weapon, and it will be cheaper on ammo, but you lose the DPS, as well as it feels very nice. It feels very, very nice with fire rate. I've got mine on fire. If you've noticed, I haven't been talking about any of the elements of different weapons, and it's because so far we haven't got any weapons that the different element really matters on. It's whatever you need. If you want to use it against any enemy type, you're going to want energy. If you're using it against like water only, then you're going to want nature. So it really just depends. There's only a few guns that it's pretty straightforward what you should do with it. But yes, there's the Bobcat, quite a nice gun. Really burn down things. The biggest disadvantage of the Bobcat is its lackluster range. Whereas the Hacksaw had a pretty good range, an average range, it's about the range of a Scar. This definitely is dropping off. So I believe we've got about 2 tiles here until we start getting damage drop off, and it's going to make the gun way less effective. The Spectre, which I'm about to start talking about next, is the exact same. They have both the exact same amount of range, the exact same range issue. It means that to use this gun correctly, you're going to have to be very fast and fluent. Ninjas it can be very nice on, as well as Outlanders that are able to phase shift into battle, or you just have to be very aware of it with the Soldier or the Constructor, that if you do step outside the range, you're going to be doing a lot less damage. So here's the range here. This means when it does 20% damage or something, this number's a little bit misleading, but basically this number is saying it's about a tile and a half, 2 tiles until we lose our max damage. So I forgot to look at this on the Hacksaw, but to go back quickly, it's got that normal sort of assault rifle. So we get another half tile of range sort of thing. And it's definitely something you do feel in your combat. This game is a very close quarters combat, so you are closer than you are in a lot of other games, but still that damage drop off is very important to note. So same with the Spectre. Before we go into the Spectre, just keep in mind it is a close range gun. Now, if we look at these rolls straight away, this is really, really high crit chance, really, really high crit damage on the gun itself, giving it a very high crit potential, along with that fire rate. So here you've got 2 very distinct builds, but also both very viable. I have flat damage on mine currently, and it's something that I've used for a while. I like it, and it means that I know exactly what the gun does. I shoot an enemy and it dies in 5, 10, 2 mags, whatever. I know exactly what it does, but it is theoretically lower overall DPS. Depends on your luck to how often you're critting. So whilst I do like this build, I have very recently, with the hero rework a few weeks back, as well as just the new 174 content, been tempted to change this to crit. And that's because when we have this high level content with more HP, crit gets more of a chance to shine. You have to shoot targets more, meaning they take more bullets to kill, meaning there's more chances to crit. So I like this build, I can recommend it, but a lot of other people will run crit rating and crit damage here. It's not bad, but personal preference really comes into play here, as well as the way you build your hero. If you're using Sledgehammer as the main, you want to be finding the crit weapons, and from this weapon set in particular, the Silent Spectre and the Wraith are going to be your crit weapons. Most people will gravitate towards the Wraith, and I'll explain why in just a second, but the Silent Spectre is another good choice. So onto the Wraith. We've actually got the crit build on this, and that is because this gun is a fantastic crit build. It is very hard to use this gun with anything else. As you can see, its headshot potential there, which is what everyone originally was hoping it was going to be, was a headshot weapon. And even the description here sort of says, a silenced assault rifle with excellent headshot damage and stability. They say that, but that's only 100% headshot. We have weapons that do 250% headshot damage. So this is only a 2 times modifier on the headshot. Not bad, but in comparison to the crit build of this, which this starts with a crit of 20, and then we have 75 here, meaning this is a very, very good crit potential. The fire rate does let it down a little bit though, but the thing that really, really shines for this gun is something I mentioned with the Bobcat, is that even though that fire rate does let it down a little bit, the fact that you can have double crit damage on it means it's incredibly nice, incredibly powerful when it does crit. So hitting around the 50% crit does make a really nice feeling crit weapon, and that's what you sort of want to aim for when you're looking at crit weapons. And a caveat to that is I'm very, very against having double crit rating. It's basically a wasted roll. So if you're needing to run double crit rating to get around sort of 50%, I don't really like the weapon. Diminishing returns is huge on crit rating, so you can't really get that much more than 48. So you're not really ever really going to want double crit rating, because it hits diminishing returns and becomes a wasted perk. Alright, we didn't show any of the Silent Spectre. We'll show both of these at once then. So that's the Wraith, and the other big thing the Wraith does, which is fantastic, is the range. As you can see, the range of this is almost double what we're looking at with things like the Spectre, right? Meaning that we can get about 4 tiles of effective damage before we start hitting drop off. That makes it incredibly good for when you're sitting in the base. So where I've been standing here, imagine this is like a little base. So we can do our max damage to these minions that are all the way over there. When we pull out the Spectre and we start trying to like spray them down, they're not going to be taking much damage at all. In fact, it's probably going to be about half damage at that point. So the Silent Spectre, the Bobcat, and any other gun that has that low sort of below 4,000 at range is very much a close quarters weapon. You're sort of going to be looking at using it within this sort of range. Any further, even here, that's going to be getting damage drop off by the end of that tile there. Alright, so we'll show some gameplay. This will be the Spectre. Once again, I've got it on nature. That's because I like it for against water minions, but whatever element you want really works. This encampment is fire, which is a bit of a pain. So already I've had to run away, right? Because those laser boys, and I'm not able to use the gun as nearly as effectively as if I was closer. And that's one of the problems with some of the closer range weapons, is you do have to be very, very careful how you use them. They can get you in a lot of trouble by trying to stick in their effective range while taking a lot of damage. Now these are fire minions, so I'm going to be doing poo-poo damage against them, but I still was able to kill them. Finish off these laser boys. Well, throaty boys. There you go, that's the Spectre. Very nice weapon. We'll reset that quickly, and we'll show you some of the Wraith. All the while I'm trying to show the gameplay of the weapons here. So now I'm going to be able to sort of like post up a little bit more and sort of snipe in a little bit more. We are running crit here, so sometimes we'll do damage, and then other times we'll just sort of melt beam things in the face. Now you can see the way I'm using this here. It's in a very particular way. I'm making sure that I'm only bursting, not autoing. So what happens when you auto is the bloom goes to an absolute freaking maniac, making it incredibly hard to hit anything that isn't a smasher, that is more than a couple tiles away. So if we sort of use this as a burst weapon, if you ever played Halo, you would have remembered using the assault rifle in a burst sort of manner. It's going to be quite nice for you. So I shoot 3 to 5 bullets depending on how far the target is. At this sort of range I can go auto a little bit more, but I make sure I don't move. So that's the Wraith. Arguably one of the best weapons in this set. One of the people's favorites, I should say. Maybe not the best, at least in my opinion, but the people's favorite. And it is a weapon that I am wanting to get 3 of, 1 for each element. And it is worth noting that with this weapon in particular, the Wraith, when we got these llamas back, we can now have a new 6th roll on them. They could never have snare or affliction before. They now can. They now can. So on this Wraith that I've got here, it's not quite optimal anymore. And in fact, I'm going to be looking for a snare or affliction. That is actually something, come to think of it, that I have forgotten to mention a little bit earlier, is the 6 rolls. That's mostly because the 6 roll choice is dependent on the way you play, what you want, personal preference. But the decision is normally straight up, it's going to be against snare or affliction. Snare making things like smashes take longer to get to the base, but not really that handy against your general grunts, because they're going to be dying anyway. You don't need them to go slower. Where affliction is just going to be increased damage. So if you're going to be, if you shoot smashes with this gun, and you don't have like a bundle bus, or you don't have a target draw, or you don't have a certain weapon you swap to deal with that smasher, then snare on it is going to be quite nice. But if you do have a secondary weapon that you use for smashes, then having that extra tiny bit of damage that the affliction does is relatively free. Alright, so we've looked at the main 4 assault rifles and my personal 4 favorite guns, with the exclusion of the Obliterator. It's a whole different beast, but more my favorite weapons from this set. We can talk about the Obliterator, but I want to save that to maybe a little bit. We'll do it now because that's one of the big weapons people like to know about. So the Obliterator is an interesting one. There's quite a few things to keep in mind with the Obliterator. This is because of how many functions it has. So this weapon can destroy walls, destroy cars, can destroy buildings in one hit, meaning that it's got a lot of utility potential at helping you clear objectives very, very quickly. It also has a lot of damage, meaning that for the player, it can do quite a lot of work for you. It has good headshot potential. It hits like a truck with a headshot build, but headshot builds are going to be quite tricky to use, and that's going to bring me to the next point, which is headshot builds are terrible for defenders, and this is a favorite for a defender weapon. A lot of people run the Obliterator as their defender weapon. So the headshot build, although probably the best DPS overall for the weapon, is hard to use. Hard to use unless you're like sort of standing still and you're willing to sort of like really devote to making sure you're getting headshots instead of sort of just quick scoping and just going for body shots. So you've got a very important decision to make, and I should mention that it does penetrate, right? So you can shoot those targets through that wall and through each other. Very nice little sort of like perk that it does have. So you got to really to think about how you're going to use this weapon. I do recommend perhaps even getting 2, 1 for damage and 1 for utility, or 1 for damage for yourself if you want that headshot build, and 1 for utility / defenders. So right now the build that I have on this is a very new build. I originally had it on a crit build, not because the crit build was necessarily good, it was because it was really good for speedrunning the Storm King. If you crit, you would 1 hit a crystal. And that means that there is another whole entire build for the gun for a very, very niche reason, which is fighting the fighting the Storm King. So you got to work out what you're going to do with this gun, more so than any other of the military weapons. I will show you the roles that I've got here, and then we'll show off some gameplay. So the very first one, the one that I've been using this whole time, is a double damage headshot impact, and I've left it on physical as well. So the reason why it's been left on physical is because I'm mostly going to be shooting this at things like laser boys, takers, lobbers, flingers, things that are far away from the objective, but pose a very big threat to me to be getting too close. So physical is quite nice there because they're all physical minions, meaning I'm doing the bonus damage. The what is it? The bonus 24%, I think. Yeah, bonus 24% damage. So the build I've got here as well with that impact does mean that it can stagger and sort of slow down smashes, which is quite a nice little thing. It means that I don't have to go for headshots, but I do get more damage when I do go for headshots. And that headshot roll in particular, there's nothing else that really fits there super well in my opinion. Reload speed is very nice on it because it is a very slow reload speed. Fire rate, I don't think's necessary. The gun fires fast enough. Like, bam, next guy, bam, next guy, bam, next guy, bam. Fire rate's good enough for the actual damage build. Alright, let's see if we can do some work with it. This is obviously not going to be the best idea, trying to destroy an encampment with a obliterator, but we'll try nonetheless to see how much work we can get done with it. Once again, 106 versus 108, so it's relatively like balanced. Pop heads when I can. These guys especially, I want to hit them in the head for that bonus damage. They are larger hitboxes, so it is a lot easier to do. Another thing I should mention is the hipfire accuracy on this weapon is ridiculous. Meaning that, sorry, that's my phone. Meaning that you can actually just no-scope things all day if that's what you're into. You sort of like pull up, aim, shoot. Even stick a bit of blue tack on your monitor. I've done that before, and the weapon has insane hipfire bloom. So I want to hit that big guy. Got him. Crazy. Alright, so that's the obliterator. Very, very nice weapon. Highly recommend checking this one out, especially seeing that even if you don't want to build two of them, you can use it to clear things out of your way and make starting missions way faster. Now, if you are interested in building a second, I can very much recommend this utility build that I've got here. Alright, quit it, buddies. I'm trying to like talk here. Go away. Let's head just back towards where I've got all these patrol wards so things don't spawn. Alright, so we've got fire rate and reload speed. The two things that I said I don't want on my damage obliterator, I'm now using on the utility. The increased fire rate just means that I'm able to now go through buildings, go through whatever I want a lot faster. I'm also running a magazine size, and there's a very good reason I've only got the magazine size on purple. It's because if I actually make the magazine size here gold, I don't actually get another extra bullet. This can only ever have 7 bullets. The non-magazine size variant only has 4, but then if we give it the purple magazine size, we get 7. So yes, we got the fire rate, the reload, magazine size, and I've left that on purple damage because honestly, unless you want to use a like malachite version or a silver version or a lower ore version, you don't actually need these perks to do that much damage. In fact, I think you could even keep this, you could experiment for yourself, but you could keep this blue and blue. Now personally, I do actually use the malachite versions. That's mainly because I have like 100 guns in my inventory and it makes them really easy to see down the bottom because they're level 82. But for testing sakes, I did mess around with this, and yeah, you can get away with having a less rarity on these rolls. You'll have to mess around with it yourself. The only one is just don't upgrade the magazine size. I might have to split this video into 2 parts as well, so like that's half an hour there. So the rest of the weapons, in my opinion, are way less valuable, but I'll talk about them. Still show them off. The Bold Eagle I do like. Still not a huge fan of these other weapons, but we'll show them off. Alright, so to explain them, first we'll look at the Lynx. So the Lynx is a very accurate weapon. It's got a very good first shot accuracy. In fact, it's almost purely accurate. By the burst of the 3 shots, the last bullet does become quite inaccurate compared to the original shots, but it is still quite nice, meaning that you can really kind of like snipe with this. It doesn't have though the range to sort of follow up on that sniping potential. It's only got it's got average sort of range, better than the close quarter combat sort of SMGs, the Bobcat and the Silent Spectre, but still not good enough to be able to really snipe. So I can hit these guys and I don't think I'm getting any damage drop off at this range. Maybe if I stand here I really shouldn't be. But the biggest problem with this gun is that it's just lacking in damage. So it's unfortunately the thing that really lets the gun down. It could be really nice. The build I do recommend if you are interested in using this is at least 1 fire rate perk. As you can see, it is automatic, so you can hold down the bottom gun and it does become automatic with incredibly nice bloom, really. And it feels very satisfying to use. I will mention the perks on this are a little bit weird rarity wise, but this is the build that I do recommend. The double headshot here. The double headshot here is quite nice. It is sort of synergizing with the headshot potential of the gun, which I do believe is more than 2. I think it's 2.2, maybe 2.5. Don't quote me on that, but it is at least a double headshot damage multiplier, which does mean it is relatively good for a headshot build. So these 2 headshot build rolls here are going to be giving us nice juicy headshots. Something interesting to mention when it comes to headshots is that the damage roll here actually increases headshot damage as well. That is because headshot damage is a multiplier from the base damage. So if you could have 3 headshot damage rolls, I probably wouldn't actually do that. That's because this headshot roll, this is a headshot roll in a way. It's just a little bit weaker. And it means when you miss, you're not fully punished for it. The other interesting thing about this is that potentially in war games where there's that headshot mode where you just need to like get a little bit of extra damage to be able to finish off your targets. So that could be quite nice in that mode. I haven't actually tried that out myself personally, this gun in headshot mode, but I feel like it could be really legit. In fact, like it could be the meta gun for using in the headshot only game mode. This whole time I'm sort of able to move, maintaining a reasonable amount of sort of like mobility, trying to get all the headshots I possibly can, missing more headshots than I'd like, just because I'm not used to the gun, honestly. But definitely able to put in a bit of work with it. If you're like playing like me, if you find yourself playing like me at the moment, where I'm just like only getting a handful of headshots, maybe like 30-40% of these shots that I'm shooting here are headshots, you could run double flat damage and 1 headshot roll. That means that you will lose a little bit of headshot damage, but you do still you'll still keep a little bit, just because of the way that crap, I didn't actually mean to finish that off. Just because that roll works. That's right, there's another encampment all the way over here. So interesting weapon, and the biggest thing that I can note is that people don't actually realize it can be automatic, especially when you put that fire rate perk on it. really helps the gun out, really makes it a little bit better. The roll on it as well, the last one is that headshot. 5 headshots in a row increases damage. That's incredibly hard to get that 5 headshots in a row consistently, meaning that it's one of the worst perks in the game. But hold on, let's just make sure this encampment doesn't chase us down. Here we go. But yeah.
Watch yourselves.
Okay. Alright, so next up I'll show you the Tiger. The Tiger, again, like this gun, had a lot of potential at being a headshot gun. And if I remember correctly, its headshot multiplier on the Tiger is one of the highest headshot multipliers in the game. It's like a sniper's headshot multiplier. Let me have a look. So yeah, it's kind of hard to tell with my rolls here, but again, I looked at these before we loaded in, and I think it was at least a 2 times headshot multiplier. Looking at this, it looks like it might even be at 2.5, 3 times. You can always go into the collection book to look at the sort of stats of weapons uninterfered, or there's some websites you can look on online. But once again, we're going to be looking at a headshot build here with this flat damage. Now we don't get the oh, you know what, when we're looking at the links, kept looking at the Tiger. Oops. So we don't have double damage on the links. Okay, quick side note, I done goofed on that one. The rolls on the guns are very similar, but we're not running double headshot, mainly because running double headshot on the links, we would be lucky in DPS quite a bit. Yeah, sorry about that. Quick disclaimer. I do believe it can have the double headshot. For some reason I thought this could be a damage roll, but obviously it can't be. Alright, so we can look at the Tiger now. Double headshot we've got on this bad boy, and the damage. Now, magazine size or reload stability, it's all really kind of personal preference. I personally like reload, but it's whatever sort of floats your boat. Alright, so once again, this gun is actually automatic. People do not realize this. And I'm able to do a lot of work, but as you can see, the biggest problem is I'm losing all of my mobility here. I can barely sort of like see what's happening behind me, around me, to my sides. I don't know that I'm getting flanked, and that's not good. Definitely not nice to be getting flanked by the big dudes when you're trying to do your damage. The other thing that is very notable about it is that the bloom and the sort of control of the weapon is nowhere near what the Lynx was. So even though it's got that scope, if we had the sort of cursor, the little crosshair on the screen, it would be going pretty wild right now. So you really need to perch up to use this bad boy. You really need to not move. Otherwise, you're going to be starting to do some wild sort of spread with your gun. Alright. So here are all the stats. As you can see, that range is the big thing that it has up on the Lynx. The Lynx's range being 4,000, this one being 5,000. That range is then rivaling things like the Wraith. It's really able to rival things like the Wraith. But just the lack of mobility is quite rough with this weapon. That's why it's not one of my favorites. Again, it could be incredibly good for the headshot only game mode in war games, modifier in war games. So it's definitely worth keeping in mind. Alright, we're down to our last 3 weapons. So we'll actually no, there's these 2 bad boys too. Alright. So we'll have a look here at the Whisper first. The big notable thing about the Whisper is that it does have reasonable crit potential, 1575 if I remember correctly. And seeing that you can buff crit on pistols on the Outlanders, a lot of people do like the crit build on this. I don't think it's really as good as it used to be pre hero rework, but the Whisper is a nice gun. Very satisfying to get those headshots with as well. Which I should mention, it does have a reasonably good headshot potential. I in particular, I think I ended up scrapping my original Whisper because this is not mine. This is a crit build one. But if we look at this, it's the 2 times. So definitely still got some headshot potential, and this one in particular has that explosive headshot roll. This is my favorite on weapons that can have an explosive headshot. My rate is a little bit low for a crit build, but if you're able to buff it up and sort of hit a lot of bonus headshots for damage, and this thing's definitely going to be able to do some work for you. Been quite a while since I used a lot of these weapons, honestly, so this is almost a little bit of a reminder for me to how these weapons actually feel to use. Again, this is only on blue perks, but it's still enough to give you a bit of an idea on how it goes. And it's definitely one of the best pistols around for that good crit chance, good crit potential, the relatively good sort of bloom and accuracy. It just feels nice. It definitely just feels nice.
Impossible.
That's the Whisper 45. Alright, we'll have a look at the Bald Eagle now. So the Bald Eagle, unlike the Whisper, is not nearly... I mean, it's got some decent crit chance. I take that back. I thought it was 10, but it does have some decent crit chance. But that fire rate really makes it... Like, if you don't get a crit, it feels bad. It feels bad. So I would not be recommending this bad boy on a crit build. In fact, I'd recommend this hybrid build that I use. Highly recommend this build. It's fire rate and headshot damage. Now, the headshot modifier, as you can see with this gun, is insane. It's like a 3 headshot multiplier on the base. That's without this extra headshot roll, meaning that you can really use it to pop heads like this. If you're familiar with the Betsy or my streams, you've probably seen my use of the Betsy, and this is basically the pistol version of the Betsy. Pop heads. Now, I know that this is technically a military weapon, but this gun was added to the military weapon late, so there might be a little bit of confusion or misunderstanding about it, but this was actually added to the military weapon set later. Can't exactly remember if it came in the store or what the circumstances were exactly, but basically, yeah, this thing allows you to sort of pop heads and continue. Depends how good you are at getting headshots to how attractive this gun would be to you, but with its headshot multiplier, if you're not a fan of headshots, then this gun's probably just not for you, honestly. And its range is again around the wraiths, so we're looking at a couple effective tiles, maybe like 2, 3, sometimes getting up to about 4 tiles where we're going to be able to be doing our effective damage. Again, a very satisfying weapon to use. Alright, now we're down to the last 3, and that's going to be the crossbow, which we've actually seen the crossbow in a different weapon set, which was the Valentine's event. And this one, the biggest difference is I believe some of its damage rolls are a little bit different. I don't have the exact crossbow that I would like to use in the way that I'm about to describe, but if you can find it, this could actually be a very interesting tool for you. So we go back over here to where I've got the little setup. We can do something pretty interesting. So imagine you have your tunnels here and here. What this weapon does, I don't know if it says it in the description. Yeah, it does. Pierces through enemies. So if you have your little tunnel here and you have an affliction crossbow, what you can do with this, right, is you can actually use this as a bit of a utility thing, where anything that's sort of coming through your tunnel, you can line her up and snare them all at the same time, able to increase the effectiveness of your tunnels. Even if you're not wanting to snare them, this thing shoots very nicely through those tunnels just with that piercing damage. The headshot potential on this is not nearly as high as you would want it to be for a crossbow. I believe it's only... Okay, so the headshot multiplier isn't too bad actually. You could definitely do a headshot build on this. It really just depends on how you want to build the weapon. If you want to use it as this utility snare weapon, then obviously getting headshots is not going to be really what you're doing with it. Sure, you can snare a few things in a row if you're getting headshots, but it's easier to aim for the center body of mass, and then it will hit more targets as well. But yeah, it's a nice little gun. Funny little thing you can do with it is if you have a teleporter, so the gadget teleporter, you can set up one end there, other end there, and you can shoot it into the teleporter, and it will just bounce between the two teleporters for a few seconds before it goes away. Any target that walked through the teleporter in that time will continuously be getting hit for as many times as it does pass on. Apologies on my phone not being on silent. It should be on silent, you shit. But I don't actually know why it's not on silent. It's seeming to have, well, basically, Skynet is happening, chat. Skynet is happening. We're screwed. Alright, so the last two weapons to show off are the ground pounder. If you remember at the very start of the video, or the part 1 of this video, is that I said that I wasn't a big fan of this, and that is because of the fire rate on it for a shotgun is quite high, and you basically gotta be smacking that button quite a lot. On the PC, it is quite tiresome, just the sort of like movement is quite tiring. On a console, I will admit, clicky guns are a lot easier to use, so I would almost say that whether or not you like this gun has a little bit to do with either how comfortable you are with clicking something over a long period of time for a while, or if you're actually on console. Is the sort of like responsiveness and feel of a trigger, as well as it being a lot less intensive on your hand, makes this gun a lot nicer honestly on console. So, you know, PC Master Race and all, but consoles still got those perks. So yeah, when it comes to builds on this boy, it doesn't have the crit potential. You don't want to be getting headshots with shotguns because you're missing pellets at that point, meaning that you're probably looking at a flat damage build. Now that might be a little bit controversial to say if you're looking at content when this gun came out. That's because back in the past we used to be able to buff crit chance. We'd be able to buff crit chance with Renegade Raider. We do not have a way to buff crit chance on weapons through heroes anymore, unfortunately, with the exception of Melee. We don't have that anymore, meaning that our things like shotguns became a lot less effective, especially with crit builds. So with that being said, I do really recommend just a flat damage build on this bad boy. I'm just looking at this. I've noticed the conditional perk, so this is conditional upon this. This is on miss monsters. It's not bad, but if you do put that on the affliction, you are doing more damage. It's just you're going to be able to shoot miss monsters and do your first shot damage to be higher. Alright, let's give it a bit of a go. So you can hip fire this quite nicely.
Another frozen trophy for my collection.
Or you can aim down the sights. Either way, you're clicking away constantly.
Just no.
Reload speed would be very, very nice on this weapon. Especially if you force early reloads whenever you have the chance. Magazine size though would also work, it's just personal preference. The range on it is quite nice and the spread is quite nice for a shotgun, meaning that it is up there with main shotguns when it's so versatile like this, with how much DPS it can put out, as well as the good spread and the range that it does have. So it's not a bad shotgun, it's just not my thing. Alright, and that's leaving us with only one weapon left, as there is no melee weapons in the military set. That is going to be the quad launcher. Some of you guys might recognize this from back in BR, when it was in BR. Others might not have really seen much of it because launchers are relatively expensive to use. Looking at the perks here, we do see something very interesting for a launcher, which is more than one magazine. So you actually get 4 bullets before you have to reload, which could be quite nice. The thing is though, when it comes to all the launchers, you're going to be basically burning through mats to use them. They're going to be really useful in sort of like clutch situations where if you don't kill the enemies, you're going to lose the base, and you'll see a lot of streamers, a lot of YouTubers, a lot of content creators will pull these sort of bad boys out right when they're looking like they're in a bit of trouble. If you want to try and use this all the time, you can run some rolls that are going to allow that. So you can put some durability on there. There is a durability rocket launcher constructor around as well. I think it's 8-bit demo, but don't quote me on that. I can't quite remember right now. But as you can see, we've only basically done one encampment and the thing's about to break. And that full shot is quite nice though. The fire rate isn't too bad, and that persistent damage that it does put on the ground can be at times quite nice. So if we shoot that at that guy, and he didn't die from the explosion, but those everybody else died from the explosion. So that's definitely something that's got going for it over the rest of the launchers. Build wise, just damage, reload speed is quite nice on launchers, but this one does have 4 in the mag, so reload speed isn't as important. I think that role in particular can be durability, so I probably would recommend durability in that role in particular. But yeah, that should be about it. I guess I'll just show off the obliterator, and that should be the well, at this point, videos done. Alright, so there you go. You can just sort of like press W and clear out. So say the objective's here, this all has to go. We can just sort of walk forward, clicking, reload, clicking. Quite nicely. This is it's going to be quite nice if you can get yourself a second obliterator and you've got sort of the free perk up to spend. It is really worth in comparison to the normal obliterator build. I'm almost like double as effective. So it's not too bad, but then the reload, brutal. And we'll go back to our utility one and then able to clear out like no tomorrow. Alright, so that will be it for the video. I hope it was informative. If you've got any more questions, feel free to put them in the comments below or drop into my stream on Twitch. I believe, yep, the details are right there, just under me. You can follow up any questions you might have in either of those two sources. If you're interested in more content like this, make sure you subscribe, make sure you...
I cannot.
What's it called? Upvote? No, that's Reddit. Thumbs up. Oh my god, my brain. To sort of tell me that you would like to see more. But otherwise, I hope you have a fantastic one, and I'll see you again another time. Peace.